We have breaking news coming out of CNBC today, possibly explaining why the White House doesn't want to release any more Jeffrey Epstein documents. A smoking gun article from CNBC today, just out a couple of hours ago, says that FBI agents were told to flag any Epstein records that mentioned Donald Trump, according to Senator Dick Durbin. FBI agents were assigned to review files in the criminal case against Jeffrey Epstein, and they were instructed to flag any documents that mentioned President Donald Trump. Durbin asked the Justice Department and the FBI to explain what his office called apparent discrepancies regarding handling of the Epstein files and findings from a Justice Department memo. And Trump has called on supporters to drop their pursuit of the release of the files, saying the controversy of withholding by Attorney General Pam Bondi is a hoax. So basically, he's calling his most hardcore supporters hoaxsters. He's accusing them of starting a hoax because they're the ones who started this whole thing, not the Democrats, not the Democrats. I don't think that's going to work this time. Honestly, every time he opens his mouth, he's making things worse. Anytime any of them open their mouth on this subject, it's making things worse. And if they don't open their mouth, that's going to make things worse too. This is a one-way street, a one-way street to worstom. They're headed to worstom. A lot of people are saying this will blow over, and it will. But guess what? It's like peeling the layers of an onion. Every time something like this happens, it peels off a few more supporters, a few hardcore supporters who will now never support him again. Maybe 50% of his hardcore supporters are against what's going on right now. And in the end, maybe only 2 or 3% will actually permanently leave him. And that's great because 2 and 3% here, 2 and 3% on Ukraine, 2 and 3% on his saying that maybe he would let immigrants stay if they provided useful functions like working for hotels or for farms. So all these things are starting to add up. And when you're in office and you start to govern, people are going to find out no one lives up to their words and no one lives up to their promises or their expectations. And this is just one more nail in the coffin to help people see, to help his most, I think, blind cult like followers see that, hey, something's not right here. Something's not right. All right, continuing on. So Durbin's letter addressed to Pam Bondi and FBI Director Kash Patel and Deputy Director Dan Bongino add to the pressure on the Trump administration over this whole fiasco. Who made the decision to this is important. Listen to this. This is what Durbin asked in his letter. Who made the decision to reassign hundreds of New York field office personnel to this March review of Epstein-related records? And why were personnel told to flag records in which President Trump was mentioned? Great questions. This is the first I think the public has uh, been informed that they held a review in March. And check out what it says below, how extensive this review was. It wasn't just a cursory review. On February 27th, Bondi drew criticism after releasing binders of documents related to Epstein to conservative influencers and commentators, which turned out to consist of files that were previously publicly available. So she made a big deal. I'm releasing these secret files to our strongest supporters in the media, in the MAGA media world. And it turned out to be nothing. And they felt burned. They felt really burned, as they should have. After intense blowback from this incident, Attorney General Bondi then appeared on another Fox News show, Life, Liberty, Levin, and claimed that a whistleblower told her that Manhattan U.S. Attorney's Office was sitting on thousands of pages of documents that the public has never seen. And she promised that we will get everything, and she was assured there was more and that the country would eventually see the full Epstein files. That was her promise on Fox News to the MAGA base. No wonder they're upset. This is not a Democratic issue. The Democrats didn't invent this issue, and they certainly didn't make MAGA explode over it. I don't think it would have occurred to them to even have exploded over it. But Durbin said his office had learned that after that, the FBI, get this, the FBI was pressured to put approximately 1,000 personnel from its information management division on 24-hour shifts to review approximately 100,000 Epstein-related records in order to produce more documents that could then be released on an arbitrarily short deadline. So just think, first of all, think about the waste, the government waste that's going on here over this crazy story. 1,000 people were pulled to work emergency duty 24 hours around the clock just so they could get this out in a very short period of time. That's why in the past, the government, which you call slow, bureaucratic, and it lumbers along, but that's why they would have taken longer because they don't want to pull everybody, 1,000 people off their normal jobs to come do this unless it's absolutely necessary. And it wasn't necessary that it had to be done in that short a period of time. Could have taken another month, another 2 months. Nobody would have, cared about that, especially if she hadn't promised that it's coming soon. So don't promise it's coming soon. All right. This effort, which reportedly took place from March 14th through the end of March, so about 2 weeks, was haphazardly supplemented by hundreds of FBI New York field office personnel, many of whom lacked the experience to identify statutorily protected information regarding child victims and child witnesses or properly handle FOIA requests. So these guys weren't even trained to handle this type of situation. They didn't have the required expertise or training in this. So they're pulling off people who don't even know what they're doing and saying, hey, you got to read 100 pages a day. 1,000 people reading 100 pages a day could read 100,000 pages. And that's about what it looks like they had. Man, this is like Elon Musk sending this Doge team into all the government agencies, and they go in. They have no experience, no knowledge of how these agencies work at all, and they go in, and within 6 minutes, they have decided they've discovered what the problem was, and they're shutting things down, and they're controlling computer systems, and they're firing people, and they don't know beans about what they're doing. This looks like it's the same thing. They're pulling in agents who aren't trained in this. This is not their regular job, and they're asking them to do something that they're not equipped to do. So, what are the chances they're going to come up with, an accurate analysis of these 100,000 documents in the Epstein files? Oh boy, it's really it's a it's a boondoggle up there, real boondoggle. Durbin says in his letter, he says, my office was told that these personnel were instructed to flag any records in which President Trump was mentioned. And I have a feeling that's all they were doing. I have a feeling they weren't analyzing the records for any other thing except whether Trump was mentioned. And would it be crazy to suggest that perhaps the reason they're not releasing the documents now is because they did find mentions of Trump that would portray him in a negative light or could cause political trouble for him? How is that not a reasonable thing to conclude? Before this review, they were all about, yeah, we're going to release documents. We have, tons of documents. We're going to release it all. To going from that to suddenly, no, we're not going to release anything. There's nothing more to see. Well, what do we now know happened between those two events? Between the time Pam Bondi said, I'm going to release everything, and the time she said, we've released all there is to release, what do we know now that happened? There was an extensive review of all these documents using 1,000 people from the FBI to go through the documents looking for mentions of Donald Trump. That's what we know. That's what happened in between the two events, the promise and the broken promise. We had a review of the records, and the purpose of the review was to find mentions of Donald Trump. So what do you bet? There were mentions of Donald Trump, and that's why they came out a few weeks later and said, we have nothing more to release. It's got to be, right? You think there are complimentary mentions of Trump in there and they wouldn't release that? Or how about no mentions of Trump? Then of course they would release it, right? Why wouldn't they? Their man's not going to get hurt by it. Let's let it go out. We promised it. Let's let it go out. Durbin then referenced a well-known quote by Trump about Epstein made to a magazine when they were still friends. Notably, in 2002, this is quoting from Durbin's letter, in 2002, Mr. Trump said of Mr. Epstein, I've known Jeff for 15 years, terrific guy. He's a lot of fun to be with. It's even said he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side, Durbin wrote. On July 7th, the Justice Department and FBI in a memo said it had concluded that there was no Epstein client list and supported the longstanding official finding that Epstein died by suicide. There was also no credible evidence found that Epstein blackmailed prominent individuals as part of his actions, the memo said. We didn't uncover evidence that could we didn't uncover evidence that could predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties. So they're saying we didn't uncover any evidence that any other people could be charged. Really, really. So all these people that Epstein was supposedly getting girls for, who, shall we say, used the girls, um, no charges for them. Seriously. I mean, I'm starting to get a little MAGA on this. The more we think about it, the worse it looks. For real. While we have labored to provide the public with maximum information regarding Epstein and ensured examination of any evidence in the government's possession, it is the determination of the Department of Justice and the Federal Bureau of Investigation that no further disclosure would be appropriate or warranted, the memo from the FBI said. Amazing, right? Amazing. And I'll just mention one thing that I mentioned in another video that I'm going to release right after this one. Um, we know there are lies about Jeffrey Epstein's death because Bill Barr said in 2019, after he died, he said, one reason that we don't know what happened, we don't know whether it was suicide, we didn't see it happen, was because the guards fell asleep and they were playing computer games on the computer and then they fell asleep. Well, all prisons do what they call counts, and they do it at random times of the day, but every day at certain times that, the times may change from day to day. But at those times, they have to do a count where they count every single prisoner. And the count consists of a guard going and actually looking at, touching, making sure each and every prisoner is where they're supposed to be and that they're alive. So in this MCC, the Manhattan Correctional Center in downtown Manhattan here, um, yeah, when they do the count, Jeffrey Epstein was on the 10th floor. If those two guards hadn't turned in the count at the right time when it was supposed to be turned in, guess what would happen? The people downstairs would call up and say, "Hey, what's going on, guys? You got to turn in the count." And if they didn't answer the phone because they were asleep, they would have sent armed guards up there because they would have thought it was maybe a kidnapping situation or maybe the guards had been killed. So this is serious stuff. In other words, guards can't fall asleep because even if they did, somebody would be up very shortly to wake them up. So we know that didn't happen. That's how all prisons work. That couldn't have happened. And that's how the MCC works. So that was a lie. That was an out and out lie. And Bill Barr, he was the head of the Justice Department, which is over the Bureau of Prisons, which is the agency that handles all federal prisons, including the MCC in Manhattan. So he had to know that that wasn't true and that it couldn't be true. He was the top guy in charge of prisons. He's got to know that. And he'd been in government all those years and he'd worked at the Justice Department for many years. He knows. Of course they know. He knew that. Anyway, so that's a lie. This is turning out to look a lot more like a lie. I didn't know that they had done such a thorough review of the documents. And I certainly didn't know that they were told to look for any mentions of Trump. That coming out kind of really, in my mind, changes everything. Really changes everything. Because from the time Bondi promised she would release the documents until the time she said there was nothing more to release, in between those two times, that review was done looking for Trump's name. So I'll leave it up to you to decide what you think. They hiding something? No, they wouldn't hide anything, right? Trump? Nah, he wouldn't hide anything. He's got nothing to hide. All right. Thanks for watching. Take care, and I'll see you next time.